listening to the golden microphones of the IMC Radio. News, opinions, and your calls.
Somebody's going to stop the machine and you realize, whoa.
You have to have some foresight to think about what kind of effect is that going to have on air travel.
How important is aviation to you?
How important is aviation to you?
From the place, we set the pace high. Breaking the lights, like the morning skies. Kids, they fly to the air. They flash and
Well,
drift.
one more time, here we are. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the golden microphones of IMC Club Radio. I'm Howie Marlin, and we have up in Boston, where?
Radek Wyrzykowski from sunny, actually not sunny, it's dark outside, but still Boston.
And down in sunny and warm Florida is who?
John Roberts, Delray Beach, Florida. It's still light out. Pretty nice.
Well, it's wonderful. I actually was down there last week. I was down in around Leesburg for a few days, enjoying the summer weather. Then, of course, was the culture shock of getting back into Boston, and you walk out of that airplane, bang!
Oh yeah.
Honey, I'm home. Well, boys, how are you doing? How's things going? John, how you doing?
Pretty good down here. Weather's been beautiful. Just amazing watching the cloud activity in southern Florida is incredible. After spending most of my life in New England, you look up one moment, it's clear and beautiful. You look up again, you can see some boomers coming, and it's just amazing. It's almost like when you see that time lapse weather photography. It's almost that fast sometimes here. Just amazing. It'd be a real challenge. It'd be really exciting to fly instrument down here.
And it is for most people. It is challenging out down there. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's flat as a pancake, and you don't have to worry about icing, but that's about it. The whole state's a runway, though. The whole state could be a runway.
One of the things that amazed me was I was talking to somebody about flying, and we were looking at those amazing clouds that you talked about. And he was asking me the difference between flying in instrument conditions versus VFR and what the true definition of it was. And could I or would I be flying through any of those clouds? And it really it created quite a conversation about the weather in Florida and how you have it creates its own weather in the middle of the state.
It's amazing what the heat does. And it's all about the heat. Heat and windy, and boy, it gets windy, unbelievable. It can be still. We live right near some canals, and you can see it looks like a mirror. And in 15 minutes, it's like, whoa. It's like, what happened? Where did this wind come from? It's just the heat. It's really fascinating.
Speaking of instrument flying, Howie, you are going to be entering soon your instrument training. Quick question for both of you. When can you log your instrument approach? When instrument approach is loggable? And by the way, FAA, just today, they clarified that issue. But what do you think it is? Because, obviously you're not going to be flying instrument right down to minimums all the time. So if you're going to break out at 3,000 feet, probably, even though you're still on instrument approach, you are not going to log it. But at which point you are going to be logging it? What is FAA allowing you? Do you know?
Before we go any further, Radek, speak farther away from your microphone.
Okay, I'm so far from mic. I'm in a different room actually than the microphone now.
Well, you need to go to another house.
Okay, well, I'll try to do this. How is that? Is it better?
Actually, that's much better. And so my guess would be, when are you authorized to log instrument? Would be when you are following instrument protocol.
Okay, but still, you could be following the protocol and be under visual conditions.
Well, that's your option, is to fly IFR protocol or VFR, your call. But when you are dictated the direction and the waypoints and everything that you go, and you say, yes, I'm doing that, isn't that your...
Actually, it's not.
Then please, Grand Poobah, explain.
Okay. John.
Well, I would know less than you, but would it make sense that once you are cleared Once the control, if it's a controlled field, once you are cleared for yeah, that's a good question.
You know, it has been big confusion for years. So finally, FAA did clarify this, and they basically said very simple procedure.
What's that?
Basically, you have to be under instrument conditions past your final approach fix. So when you are breaking out of the clouds past your final approach fix, then you can log that instrument approach as a loggable. It's a loggable approach.
Out of the clouds after.
So anything up to down to minimums passing final approach fix, which Howie would know a little bit more about what it is.
Right.
You have to still be in IMC. You have to be in the SOOP. So if SOOP is at altitude above what is the prescribed altitude at final approach fix, you cannot log that instrument approach.
Really?
So now Howie's going to go and change all his logbook. I mean, now you have to go back and erase all those flights that you made.
It's a good thing I do it in pencil.
I know.
Wow. I had no idea. I wonder how many people have been doing it wrong.
You know, from the practical aspect of it, I can say a lot of them. There are many pilots that it's still, because let's realistically look at it. Who is going to really control it? I mean, how it's all an honor system.
It is. It
It's
really
all,
is.
yeah, what you put in a logbook.
Yeah.
So realistically, if let's say I'm in a solid SOOP, I'm on approach on the edge of the thunderstorm, I'm fighting the airplane, I'm maintaining needles perfectly, and I'm breaking out 10 feet above the altitude that is prescribed at final approach, or below rather, final approach fix, I probably will still log that approach. On the other hand, if I'm flying something and it's VFR, or VMC I should say, below 3,000 feet, and I break out, I enter approach under VMC, visual conditions, and I fly the entire procedure, but I can still see outside, then no, I'm not going to log. So I would advise people use common sense.
Yeah. I mean, geez, after all these years, we're still defining what's loggable. I mean, geez, come on, that's amazing.
So if I'm flying from New England up to Maine, and I'm spending a couple of hours in the SOOP, but I break out at 3,000 and land, I can't log that?
No, you can log the SOOP time, but you cannot log the approach.
Right.
Oh.
When we're talking, not just flying in the SOOP, we're talking about logging the approach.
Right.
Because as we know, to be current, you have to log 6 of them within 6 months.
So going up with a safety pilot and being under the hood doesn't cut it?
Now it does, but then it's different, because if you're under the hood, you have to be flying down to minimums. So you cannot flip your hood before you hit either your decision height on ILS, so the minimum altitude, or you're at MDA, minimum descent altitude at non-precision.
Well, the way I've been doing it, we've been going down right to minimums. And, of course, with safety pilot, no problem. And so, we haven't broken any rules then.
And then you go lower and lower, then you suddenly realize that actually you're driving on a local highway.
Right. And the difference between MDA and DH is just the type of approach, right?
It's a type of altitude. So when you're on the glide slope,
right,
that's an ILS,
right.
Then you go to certain altitude that is called the decision height. So basically, you hit certain altitude and you have to make decision. Because you're very close to the runway surface. On the other hand, a non-precision approach, you descend to certain altitude, minimum descent altitude,
right?
And you simply go along and you try to find the airport.
So the difference between precision and non-precision.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So
But that was a little digression. I guess that's not what we're going to talk about.
Geez, yeah. Hey, are there any women here in aviation? Let me look. Hold on.
Where's your wife?
Oh, she's in the other room. She's doing something else.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, and thank you very much.
Howie, does your wife fly?
Not willingly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No.
Okay.
Did she take over the radios?
Well, it's funny. No, she doesn't, but she's finally started asking me to take her places. And what's interesting, I've been flying this airplane now for about 5 years. And for the longest time, she would not get in the airplane with me. Now, although I flew with an instructor, a mutual friend of ours, and we went to a couple of places together, she didn't want the president and the vice president to be the same plane. That was her philosophy.
Oh, okay. I know families like that. The father and the mother won't fly in the same plane. One will each take one kid.
Well, that was her rationale until the kids are out of college. Then when my youngest graduated, that was it. And she started flying with me. So that's been, she has no problem with that. But what we were talking about was women that are involved in aviation. And the reason why we're talking about this, folks, is I was invited to and I accepted helping out Women of Aviation Worldwide International. Now, it's called the Institute for Women of Aviation Worldwide. And the reason why I got involved, I was a late bloomer in aviation, started getting my ticket, working on my ticket 10 years ago. Finally, between the two flying clubs and over 40 people, I finally got my license. I started going to the flying shows and was absolutely struck at where I hardly saw any female pilots or people involved, very few. That kind of thought stuck in my craw, but I started getting very concerned about the declining pilot population and the rising fuel costs and the expenses and the difficulties that I went through and wanted to help. So I started looking for organizations to be part of with the idea of helping to inspire new young aviators. I joined the Flying Musicians. Of course, EAA and AOPA became my local airport safety network member and was really looking for other organizations that I could play with that would inspire more people to look to the sky. So in getting to know David Dunlop from Sennheiser, he gave me a call one afternoon and made reference to the fact that I'm involved in uncontrolled airspace and Sun and Fun Radio and Flying High Coffee and Young Eagles and everything else. And he asked if I would be interested in helping this association. It turns out there's really two major organizations that focus on women with regards to aviation. There's Women in Aviation and there's Women of Aviation.
And Howie, let's not forget about 99ers.
Oh yeah, that's
a third and very energetic organization there.
Well, and the 99 are probably they're the oldest and most established. And,
right, they are. They used to come to Norwood once a year, and we used to host them.
Which is it's a fantastic group. Now, Women of Aviation created this week-long international event where folks from all over the world have these basically like Young Eagle type events all at the same time. And the idea is to turn everybody's attention towards aviation. And because lots of countries are very close together in Europe, smaller, they interact, it made more sense to do this very broad blanket over this very long very, geographically, very far and far-reaching event. Well, let me tell you, I'm thrilled. The numbers are huge. The volume of people that get involved, and learning about people who are involved in aviation from different walks of life and different strata and the different countries floored me. To learn about how things are going in Brazil, I mean, we think that we're all that, and then you run into countries which are growing so fast and expanding and don't have some of the problems that Eastern Europe has or Western Europe. But the point is, it's a fantastic organization, and folks, in the future, I hope to be able to speak more eloquently and more intelligently about women of aviation worldwide. But the World of Aviation Worldwide Week is the big thing. So please Google it, Women of Aviation Worldwide Week. Have an event, take girls up flying, turn them on to aviation, science, technology, engineering, math, and I throw the arts in there. So I call it the STEAM program as well. So it's truly a wonderful, virtuous program to be involved in. Yes, sir.
But isn't it unusual for men to be involved in organization that is typically for women, by women?
Sure.
It's almost, I'm trying to look for a comparison. Let's say we have a basketball association, and I'm a soccer player, right? So it's women in aviation. How do you find yourself in this organization? Isn't that, a bit unusual? I mean, do you feel like, I don't know. I'm not really sure how to specify this question. I'm sure, you know what I'm asking about. I mean, do you feel strangely in an unusual place?
Not at all. And the idea is, my involvement is to help with my experience in the various industries I've been in, the businesses I've been in, my marketing, sales, as well as my aviation interests, to help the organization grow, to overcome obstacles for marketing and basic business practices, and put my shoulder into it with the goal of helping the organization reach its goals. So although I'm a male in the females organization, no, it doesn't matter. It's a gender neutral effort. It doesn't matter, man or woman. If you're working towards expanding the scope of aviation and bringing more women, more young ladies involved into aviation, it doesn't matter, what your gender is, because you're rowing that boat. And with the idea of getting more people, of course, more females involved, and this is because there's more opportunities in aviation than most people are aware of. So bringing my skill set, it doesn't matter what gender I am.
Okay, but let's be specific here. I hope, John, you don't mind just one more question. I know you want to talk to Howie too about this. You said to help overcome obstacles. What do you think those obstacles are? I mean, also, John, that would be a question for you. And what do you think are the obstacles for women in aviation?
Oh, I think it's kind of surprisingly simple in that I just think it's kind of a cultural thing. I think when we were kids, I know I can speak for maybe the boomers, little boys look up to the sky, and your dad took the son to the airport to go see planes for the first time, which is what happened to me, where, the little daughter, it might be, we'll take her to an animal park or a zoo. It was almost created just a simple cultural thing in this country. For some reason, I don't think little girls are like, someday you can go do that. But you're absolutely right. I don't think there's really any active, deliberate blocks other than a girl thinking mentally, I can't fly. I mean, you look in the skies today, you see there are women.
But you did have Amelia Earhart, right? She actually established 99.
Oh, absolutely.
So there were women in aviation, and for some reason, like any other area in life, they are there everywhere.
Yeah, I'd love
aviation is just a very small percentage.
Yeah, I'd love to know if in the small percentage of women that are into aviation, Was it their father? Was it in the family? Did someone actually introduce them the way it typically does a young man? I mean, there's always little kids that look up in the sky and see airplanes. Boy, girl, doesn't matter. It's still amazing to me. I still blows my mind to see a plane up there with two wings, and for some reason it's not coming straight down. It weighs 300,000 pounds, and why doesn't it come straight down? That still blows my mind. So I just think it was a culture thing, and I think the people born in the 70s, and maybe today it's a little different. I don't know. Maybe it's gotten a tough rap, and that don't become a pilot if you want to earn a living. Because it seems like that's almost a funny way to say it. Don't become a teacher if you want to make money.
John, my friend, you're certainly no shortage of going off on different tangents. Here I want to ask our audience, if you are a woman involved in aviation, I would like for you, please, to send an email to Radek to just let us know that you're out there. I'll be happy to send you a link to the Institute for Women of Aviation Worldwide. And to answer your question, Radek, clearly, on an international scale, there are roles in life which our societies seem to gravitate to. When it comes to mechanical and engineering things, for the most part, it seems that it's male-dominated. When it ever comes to machinery or things like that, of course, with aviation. The fact that not only do women do it as well, if not better, the fact that we have relied on women in aviation throughout history simply proves that they're more than capable and more than valuable. But it's a universal perception. And I'm thrilled to say that, and the travels that I've done a little bit of traveling over the last few months, and had the opportunity to talk to the women pilots for these airlines. I introduce myself, and I don't necessarily always tell them about my involvement with IWOW, but I'm curious, and I tell them that I'm a pilot and I'm involved in different programs, and I start asking them about how did you get involved, and what was the challenge, what kept you? Well, I'll tell you that of the 3 women pilots, Lisa, if you're listening from American, hi. One of the things that was universal was that there seems to be the need for an individual to have an incredibly strong, concrete self-determinism. In other words, you are already willing and able to carry the ball through a lot of challenges. If you're easily distracted, or if there are things which are going to get in your way and redirect your energies, it's going to be a harder slog. Of the 3 women that I spoke to over the last couple of weeks, clearly they were determined. And what's fascinating is I share that kind of determinism. In other words, it took me 6 years, 5 CFIs, 2 flying clubs, of which there were 42 people. I had 72 hours and over 60 canceled departures before I got my ticket.
That's the national average.
And as I'm talking to these people about their challenges, I don't necessarily tell them about what I just shared with you. They talk about the prolonged difficulties, the extraordinary challenges, but they wanted it. They really wanted it. And so the pilots that we get, the female pilots that we get, are extraordinary on a number of levels. Not that any male doesn't have this determinism, but let's just say the good old boys club, it's easier to row when you're one of the guys. And for those of you who have ever been on crew, and I used to be on crew, you get somebody, who's not of your ilk in power and strength, and the team will make it happen, but it's much more awkward if you're different. So I hope I said that eloquently, and I hope I offered an explanation which made sense, Radek. Does that make sense to you?
It does, but I'm still more about, you know me, I'm about accomplishing concrete things. So if I would say, what are we going to do to have more women in aviation? Concrete steps. I mean, because yes, we have, event week long. That's fine. But after that week, after the excitement, just like Oshkosh, just like Sun and Fun, we all go home, and actually we are addressing, just by pure logistical limits, just a very small group of people. So if you would gather, let's say, 10,000 women in that 1 week, and then you compare this to number of pilots and all the other percentages, that's nothing. So how do we address this problem on a much more wider basis? I mean, where do you go to let them know that those possibilities do exist?
And here's your answer. You go to the youngsters. Now, it's not that you can't go to teenagers and college kids. You can. But I'm a therapist. I live in the world of psychology, and to affect change, the most effective way of bringing a culture to the surface is to present it to the very young, to minimize their fears very early, to create seeds of inspiration, plant seeds of excitement that grow inside of them so that they are familiar with the terms, the equipment, and the feeling. They see role models who are doing it effectively, efficiently, with fun, and they get familiar with the terms. So when they get another opportunity later in life, they are not fearful out of naivete or lack of knowledge. So what both Dr. Chabran and Michelle Goyer in Women in Aviation and Women of Aviation, what they're doing is spreading these the inspiration in a very broad ways, in very different ways. The Institute for Women of Aviation Worldwide is reaching out to the folks who are inspirational and having them create these opportunities of introduction throughout the year, but focusing on this 1 week event. And it's truly an awe-inspiring program, the Institute for Women of Aviation Worldwide.
Well, I was thinking too, to get, like you say, Howard, to get them young and get them to the airports. I still think it's not that different from taking your little boy to the airport, take your girl to the airport. What about and what about flight schools? What can flight schools do to entice girls? And maybe have discovery flights free for girls in the month of April or something.
Well, those are good ideas, and I'm going to tell you that when I was at AirVenture a couple of years ago, I happened to meet the marketing director of AOPA when I was helping Flying High Coffee. You guys may remember we were a premier sponsor. And I was brought into a round table, and I had no idea that I was going to be sitting with Jeff Skiles, who led the program. This is Miracle on the Hudson, the co-pilot. And the presidents of the various aircraft manufacturers. There were 30 of us, including the big technology leaders and me. Why me? I'd actually told my story about the challenges that I had with reference to how I was involved with the Young Eagles program, and they did not invite the adults to participate. So I expressed my concern to him about how I was so ready for and would embrace anything regarding aviation that came my way. And as far as the Young Eagles program was concerned, I wasn't their market. I wasn't invited. And me and the older people, the parents and such, were not part of that. What we're talking about is introducing aviation to women of all ages,
Oh yeah.
but looking at inspiring the youth. So, yes, of course, there's lots of discussion going on. And, John, I certainly hope that we're part of that discussion to bring the fence down, to open the door and encourage flight schools, different programs to get people out inside and experience it. But this has to be universal, and it can't be exclusionary. These organizations, the Institute for Women of Aviation Worldwide and Women of Aviation Worldwide Week, are doing a phenomenal job at getting teachers and other professionals to lower that gate and bring young ladies to the airport and do exactly what we were talking about. But John, You're right. It's going to take everybody. And I'm telling you this, guys, if we're successful, if IWOW is successful at any degree of getting more women involved in aviation, more youngsters, you're going to see more guys following the women. A team effort together, having guys and girls. Why should it be the Boy Scouts over here and the Girl Scouts over there? No. As far as aviation is concerned, we're all in it together. The same training, the same philosophy, and the same support.
Yeah, so actually I have a question for you, but before I want to mention Jeff Skiles, good friend of mine, by the way. He is an IMC club member, by the way.
All right. Way to go, Jeff.
So would it make sense to unite rather than create another organization? Would it make sense to make some kind of Women of Aviation alliance that would work together? Because I have a fear that we have a tendency in aviation to everybody wants to have their own organization. We go in small pieces, and de facto we are accomplishing much less than we could if we unite. And of course, that goes along with our unification with EAA that is literally days away from big final announcement here. That's pretty much all I can say here. But my vision of future of aviation is to gather everybody, all the forces together, because really we're not against each other. We are against, if you will, of course, quote unquote, a general population that knows nothing about general aviation.
Yeah.
Rad, I couldn't be more supportive of that. Uniting all these efforts and rowing together is what has to happen. Why? Because if we're spending any time fighting amongst ourselves, we're distracting from the goal. The goal is keep the eyes on the prize. And the prize is inspiring more aviators to take to the sky. And it's funny because they're there. We just have to give them permission. And that's the idea.
And people have to realize too that other than the military route, GA is the road to flying.
The only road to flying.
Yeah, I mean, unless you go into, like you go into the military and you start there. But in general, I don't think people realize, the general public or even the people you're trying to attract, realize that that's the first step. You've got to go. That's the first way. And GA, sometimes I feel like GA is just something off to the side somewhere.
Yeah, but John, even in military, you learn to fly in general aviation. You get your first Cessna 152, 172 training with regular GA flight school up to your first solo, and then you go to military.
Okay.
They're not going to train you in this multi-million-dollar machine. And by the way, now you go solo in your...
No, I mean, the military must have small single training planes as well. But
yes, but no,
yes,
it's
called
they're subcontracting actually to GA flight schools. I did train those students in my career for Navy. They come in groups and they have very intensive training, and they go up to their first solo, and only then Navy will take them and train them any further.
Well, I'm kind of surprised because I thought the Harrier was a really good primary trainer. You start with the 50 gallons of water on there and how to manage the cooling system.
Yeah, just make sure that when you're on downwind to base.
but
I'll tell you guys, this is a great subject, and I want to get Morel on board, Morel Goyer, who's the president of the Institute for Women of Aviation Worldwide, and have her explain in such eloquent detail the reason for the growth of all these efforts. This is funny. IMC Club is joining up with EAA, which is wonderful. EAA looked around and saw, wow, these boys over at the IMC clubs are doing something that we weren't doing. Wow, how did we miss that? And I'm telling you, they're going to be looking at the Institute for Women of Aviation and go, wow, these girls are doing something that we didn't look at. So, it's just so frequent that when you put your nose...
Actually, we'll have to say these girls and Howie.
These people, well, you're absolutely right. Howie and Dave and these women. It's sort of like women of aviation and the men who love them. So that's the way to go. What'll be interesting to see is as these organizations get more traction, have more events, ring their bells louder, how EAA and AOPA, which have already started to recognize the virtues of bringing their efforts to the fold and just rolling it all into the
I'm sure they will.
Well, there's no two ways about it. Both organizations are making headway in different philosophies, and the Institute for Women of Aviation Worldwide and their Women of Aviation Worldwide Week. It's truly a fantastic event, and I really hope that people go online and just look it up and find out how they can help participate. And we also have the Fly It Forward program, which is a beautiful philosophy. You think of pay it forward, fly it forward, turn people on to aviation, turn the parents, turn the mothers, turn the children on to aviation, like I said earlier, in a comfortable way. Get them familiar with the terms, get them familiar with the smell of the aircraft, the airport, the joy and fun, and we'll see what happens. Because, brother, we certainly need it. Side note change, though. I want to tell you this. I'm amazed that MoGas is now $2 a gallon. When are we going to get $2 a gallon in avgas, Brad?
Oh, forget it.
No, it's not going to happen.
But it will.
John, you wanted to comment something on Howie's previous statement.
Talk about getting women or people in general into aviation. Would you say are there more and more universities offering aviation programs than there were 20 years ago? Is that growing or is that declining? Down in Florida here, I've noticed I see big billboards with get your aviation pilot.
We'll catch up with you. I think we're back on air. Well, it's just me. Apparently we had some sort of technical difficulties, but I'm going to say that we will certainly be continuing the conversation about women with regards to aviation in the future. I will be out at NBAA, as will the Institute for Women of Aviation Worldwide. And I would like very much for anyone that's involved in aviation, any women involved in aviation, to send us an email and let us know who you are. I'll supply you with links to these organizations and perhaps get to meet you out in the air shows around the country. I'll certainly be at AirVenture, Sun and Fun, NBAA, and other than that,